Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking some time to come out. I want to give a special thank you to the Western Lake Superior Sanitary District. You're going to hear from Executive Director here in a moment, but a thank you, as we were saying. The basic things that make our communities function, that allow people to have safe sanitary conditions and allow for business growth to happen, is right here in this facility. And it takes a lot of dedicated employees. So, Marianne, thank you to your team and your employees for making this happen. And I was saying, for a lot of folks is when they do their job really well, you just flush the toilet and that's the last you have to think about it. Well, in terms of making sure that that water is treated correctly, that we're being environmentally sound, and we're also being economic about how we do that to make sure that we can keep our bills down, make sure that we're thinking innovatively around this. That's why we invest together across the state. And the water treatment plants and clean drinking water are two of the most foundational things that we do. And I just want to note and thank, you're going to hear from some of them, our local legislators here who have made the case. We use in Minnesota a revolving fund called the PFA, and you can hear a little bit about that cities and municipalities are allowed to draw down upon that with low interest loans, and we do some grant funding and some bonding to make sure these projects are ready. And the consistency of making sure that state bonding is there in conjunction with local funding is absolutely critical, because these folks are planning decades out with their upgrades. And so as they start to do their planning, and this is happening in every community across Minnesota, it's really important that the legislature have robust opportunities to fund that PFA and other opportunities to get bonding to them. I'll note that over the last several years, the largest bonding proposals in Minnesota history have been done at the work of these legislators who are up here. Once again, the proposal of about $982 million, with a big chunk going back into the PFA, makes that the sixth largest of all times. It's fiscally responsible. It keeps our AAA bond rating. It keeps Minnesota's infrastructure at world class, and it keeps people knowing that they're going to be able to have clean drinking water, they're going to have sanitary services, and they're going to have a system that is sound and works into the future. So we're here today to make the case that we need to continue to fund these programs. You're seeing smart usage of that right here in this facility, and as they envision of what's next, of whether it's a new paper mill, whatever may come online, building that capacity in allows us to do this. We've seen situations in Minnesota where we get so constrained we can't add a single house. Without the Lewis and Clark Rural Water Project in southwest Minnesota, that was a partnership between Iowa, South Dakota, and Minnesota. That was a 3 decades long process, but we were in communities like Adrian where we couldn't add another home. You couldn't build a house because we couldn't connect, because the water issue was so dramatic. Those need to be corrected before we can think about growth in our communities. And so, Marianne, I just want to say thank you to you, turn it over to you, and to talk a little bit about how you use some of the PFA and what happens here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Governor Walz. Thank you for our legislators and for all of you for joining us. What we do here is very, very important. It's vital for the public health in our area. It's vital for Lake Superior, the cleanliness, the recreation, business growth, all of the things that we enjoy. As a large sanitary district here, our needs for capital are consistent and large, and some of the projects highlighted today were renovations that we're doing on our clarifiers, some really innovative things that we're doing for clean energy and energy self-sufficiency. But when we do our budgeting, we have capital needs each and every year. And as the cost of things go up, the cost of our capital goes up. We could not get those things done without help from the state, funding through PFA. Ourselves, as WLSSD, we've used PFA funding over the last 25 plus years to the tune of $200 million. With the low interest rates that come with PFA and the loan forgiveness that comes at times with the grant programs, we've saved our users here millions and millions of dollars, been able to do what we need to for the cleanliness of the water and the overall environment here that we enjoy. So we couldn't do that without the help of the state, without PFA, and so we would just like to emphasize the need to continue with large, consistent funding, because we are but one clean water organization in the state, and we all have similar needs. So thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. And I would note this year that the PFA in our request through the administration was about $39 million to that. I will say this as over a decade legislator, that I do recognize that executive budgets are suggestions to the legislature since they appropriate. But the good news is we've had great partners in this who recognize the needs, and I think what's really important about this is having local elected officials be absolutely at the core of this, and many of these are truly nonpartisan or bipartisan as they tour around. Last year, for example, we were able to deliver not just to PFA and some of these existing programs, but we delivered on Spirit Mountain through their work of these folks here, to the deck, to the historic armory. Those are things that really matter, and when you think about this, I talk a lot about One Minnesota. Imagine if you're in a smaller community that the costs are nearly the same in some of these things because you still need to build a clarifier, no matter if you've got 5,000 people, 50,000 people, or 500,000 people. The size of it, sometimes that bigger size doesn't exponentially grow the cost of it. It's that initial cost. And so I think as you think of small communities across Minnesota to keep ratepayers, they don't have the taxpayer base. They don't have the property tax base to be able to pay for this, but they still want to live in those communities, and that's why this program is so critically important. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the legislators. We got a couple senators, Representative Kozlowski here, say a few words about what they've done up here. So.
After you.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much, Governor, and I just want to say thank you to the WLSS team, leadership, to what you mean in our community. As we've heard that, these projects are so important, whether it's PFA, it's the bonding, it's other funding and policy work, that we were talking on the tour today that we really need to fund at the pace and magnitude and the speed of need. And that's been really clear as we were able to get done the clarifiers. It's just really monumental. What WLSSD does is really the infrastructure behind the human infrastructure, our economy, our climate future, and so many innovative ways that they're cutting costs for Duluthians as well as to folks in the Twin Ports, servicing beyond just Duluth. We know that makes a really huge difference in our neighborhoods and each of our districts where people are feeling the cost and prices rising, right? And so that really means that people are going to feel that in their pocketbooks, but also that means that our kids are going to experience that in their futures with the water, with the storm water, that we're going to be safe from pollutants, from chemicals that are plaguing our communities. And I had the opportunity to be on the bonding tour this year, serving on that committee. We've gone out to 5 tours on the House side, and the Senate side's gone out as well. And what the governor was saying about the PFA dollars and the need, I mean, we're just so grateful that Duluth has consistently, thanks to local and our state partnerships and support, risen, and $200 million is no small chunk of change, and that is going to make massive impact. But we've heard from communities across the state who are in dire need, and so we know that just the basics of clean water, right, of healthy community. And I also just want to give a shout out to WLSSD that folks might not know all the ways that they support our community, and so with all of these sources of funding, we're actually able to see this team now working with our businesses to reduce their food waste and plastic waste, that helping communities actually come online and create regenerative and circular businesses into our green economy. And so I just want to say hands down thank you. We are so grateful for the partnership that we have in the House and the Senate and the Governor's office, and we're going to keep working together, and we're going to keep making sure that we're getting these funding out, and we're doing it in the way that does it right and does it in energy efficiency, saving dollars, and does it right by our people and our planet. So thank you. And next I'll invite up my colleagues.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. I think with the era that we live in, with national gridlock and a lot of things seemingly not getting done, under Governor Walz's leadership and our legislator, Minnesota continues to be the state that works. And it's because we think proactively about the investments that we need to make in our state, like WLSSD. This last session we were going back and forth on the funding and the bonding bill, negotiating with the minority on the bill, and we did get it done, getting the money that they needed to make sure they're getting the upgrades they need to keep our water clean. And we know that water is critical to Duluth. We have the best water, and part of that is making sure that we're doing the wastewater treatment that we need to be doing. So that's really, really fundamentally a part of our culture here in this region. As a senator of District 3, 3, I represent the most rural district in Minnesota, some of the most isolated areas, some of the best water and outdoor recreation in our region. And I'll tell you that the PFA funding that the governor's recommending, along with my bill in the legislature for WIF increases, that is so critical to our most rural communities, because to the governor's point, those sunken costs for that infrastructure for wastewater and water treatment are so significant that we don't have the property tax base or the sales tax base that some of the larger Twin Cities suburbs have. And so these programs are all the more important for rural and northern Minnesota, and that's why I'm glad to be authoring those bills, and I was just so overjoyed to see the governor thinking proactively about that and introducing it in his bonding proposal. So I look forward to fighting for bonding again this session. We're going to need the votes to pass it. We need the minority to work with us, and I hope they do, because we know that Minnesota has a whole bunch of projects, over $7 billion in projects that are waiting for funding, and we need their support to get this done, and we'll have a successful session. So thanks so much, Governor, for visiting.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you, everyone. I think pretty much everything has been said. I think we are so grateful to the governor and his team for coming up here to Duluth today, and also it has been such a pleasure to work with the WLSSD team, and I echo what Representative Kozlowski was saying just about how fantastic the work is that's being done here for our community in Duluth. You know, and Senator Houschild spoke to this a little bit as well, the culture of this region and the culture of this city truly does revolve around our place on this land with this water. Lake Superior is the greatest lake in the world, and we have the great fortune to be living our lives here at the zenith of the Great Lakes, on the greatest lake in the world, in the middle of the North American continent, at the conjunction of all of these watersheds. So our care for the water at this time in this place is so important. We all feel that. We all know that. Living in Duluth, and so many places in Duluth, you can look out, you see that beautiful shining blue jewel of a lake, so many places where you are in the city, and it just reminds us every day of how fortunate we are to be stewards of that lake and this water. So it is no surprise that the people who work at this facility, who do this very, very important work, do such an important job. You can tell that they really feel that identity piece and the importance of stewardship for our water. So thank you all very much for coming, and thank you very much, Governor, for all of your support for our region and our city.
Thanks, Senator. Well, I would just close, and we'll take some questions to echo. Senator McEwen's exactly right. This stewardship and the ethos that dominates in Minnesota, and especially up in this part of the state. But the really great part about this is that you can be good stewards of the land, and it's not a choice between doing that and economically the right thing to do. This facility is going to, at some point, be totally self-sufficient on their energy needs by using the things you flush down the toilet to turn into the energy to clean that very water. That's just smart. Those are things that's what sustainability means. That's what means being fiscally responsible looks like, and that's the visions that they're putting in. So again, we get out of that thing where, oh, if we do this, it's going to hurt the economy or cost too much. In fact, it's just the opposite. If we don't do these things, we're going to pay a heavy price. So I appreciate that vision and that advocacy. With that, the legislators would be glad to take all your questions.
Governor, you mentioned small communities. I know Hibbing has a couple of projects in your 2024 infrastructure plan, the drill core library that you toured a few years ago, and the Armory. Could you say anything about those?
Yeah, well, and I think when we put these in, listening to local folks, and I think this is the one thing, I'm going to echo Senator Hochschild on this, in a time that feels like everything is meant to be combative, whatever, the bonding in some of these things are very congenial. I'm going to give Representative Erdahl a shout out. He is a champion of the bonding bill that you find a rural Republican representative many miles from here advocating for your projects. And so in Hibbing, I know we've got some good DNR money that's going to go up into some of their facilities up there. I think I put in mine, we need the community center up there, the National Guard Armory, needs to be rehabilitated to a tune of about $4.1 million. I think those two, we have about $16.2 million, but then into all of these other projects, the ability to use PFA, the ability to use some of the existing bonding that's out there to invest in them.
Anything else?
Marion, the paper plant, obviously, it's the largest water user in our community, and it's being so old now, and Sofidel's talking about increasing production. Do you have any thoughts on the impact of that on your facility or your ability to absorb that additional volume?
Yes. So I think, at least initially, what we will see as a customer, that's roughly the same size. But I think one of the things that we take very, very seriously here is the fact that we serve the entire region. And we are an economic driver from the standpoint that we can take wastewater from homes and businesses, including large businesses like the paper mill. And as we do our capital planning and as we have done these upgrades, we can handle growth at the mill in Duluth if that's what's growing. We can handle growth in the city of Cloquet if that's where the growth is coming. But we take our responsibility for being able to meet the needs of the entire community and the desire of the community to grow in Minnesota, which is a great thing, seriously. So we have no concerns in regard to being able to handle that.
Well, once again, thank you all for being here. I'm grateful for that final statement. This is about not just now. This idea, again, I see some folks, well, I'm fiscally conservative, I'm not going to support any of this. This is about future generations. This facility here is being built for the next several generations out. And that vision that they're talking about allows for us to think about that, think about growth, think about new industries, and whether that is water infrastructure, whether that's roads, bridges, whether it's thinking about, and again, I'm going to applaud the city of Duluth, was one of the first moving forward on this, removing lead pipes, and the other side of this equation with the clean drinking water, the other side. All those things fit together. So I'm just grateful for this vision. I think it fits who we are in Minnesota, and I think we'll come out of this legislative session refunding PFA to the level it needs to, getting local projects of importance, whether it's in Hibbing, St. Cloud, Mankato, or Blue Earth, and seeing this all together, because we all do well. If we're able to see broadband expand in Blue Earth, it expands their children's opportunity for education, which gives us a better workforce. It expands their business opportunities in there. That creates a tax base for Minnesota. There's a reason that we're the 5th most diverse economy of all the 50 states, and we have the longest longevity. If you start a business in Minnesota, your chances of lasting 5 years is longer here than any other state. And I would say because of many of these infrastructure pieces that are absolutely economic drivers. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Governor.
Thanks for the vision.
Thanks, Governor.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. No questions on that one. It's economic growth.
All right. Great.
Good stuff.